Hi, everyone, and welcome along. It's nice to see you guys in the show today. Welcome to TTR, Trader Talk Radio, for the original show for today, the 31st day of May 2020. It's our last show of May, and on we head into June. Busy show for us today. We've got Ash and the ever-popular Ash Talk Market Overview with us. Following Ash's session on a market overview, we will have Ainsley on gold and Jeff on the technicals. I'm going to leave them to it today. We've been doing some education with Ash for the last couple of days. So little burnout over here in New Zealand. It's getting a bit late for us old fellas. Ash, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Quite a lot to talk about.
It's not how it's supposed to work. I'm supposed to say, Ash, how you doing? And I'm supposed to hear from you. What's going on, buddy?
You can't hear me? How can you not hear me?
I can hear you, Ash.
Oh, you can hear me.
Oh, would you look at that? I'm muted. That's the problem. Ash, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, guys, how we doing?
Yeah, very good, mate.
Good.
Very good.
Guys, can I hand it over to you guys today?
Sure thing.
Cheers,
Take it
guys.
easy,
I'll
Paul.
check on you guys and you guys a bit later on. Perhaps have a great show, eh?
All right, buddy. Speak later.
Cheers, guys. See ya.
Okay, so let's have a look at the charts here. Yeah, I thought it was a fascinating week last week, and probably an even more interesting end of week actually, because Donald Trump was out on Friday. Now, really, the markets were really interesting, I think, mainly because of the tension. I mean, we have been seeing in the FTSE an incredibly strong trend to the upside. If I bring this onto a 4-hour chart here, we've every time that we've looked like we were breaking down, and I find these areas quite interesting because really they stayed still as far down as they came, and as bearish as it started to look. It looked like the market was going to be breaking down. Oh gosh, I can't do that there, can I? It looked like the market was going to be breaking down at this point here. But you know, from falling this far, it looked like the market was going to start getting pretty bearish. But really, all it did was get back, you know, near the you know, if we say that's the structure of the base structure there, then all it really did was get to that base structure, create this incredibly bullish bar. You know, it's got a kind of hint of a belt hold about it, and the belt hold is giving us. It's pretty much it's a bar that gaps down and then manages to close near its high, which is what it did. You know, it did close near its high. So there's the belt hold. This bar here. So we got the belt hold as the market came down to that point, and really ever since then we haven't really looked back. There was one kind of issue here which I thought at the time when I saw it, I thought, okay, maybe the market is going to start breaking down now. Maybe when we are actually going to start to see a genuine trend to the downside. You know, this was a you know, maybe more of a questionable, but it did look like a lower high at that point. And that was caused. What caused that? Oh, I'll tell you what caused that. That was caused by Jerome Powell. People didn't really like what Jerome Powell said, the Fed chair, and the market did sell off, but it managed to hold right along the trend line. Really, maybe sort of popping slightly under it, but again, lovely hammer. So really what we've had is a significant move to the downside with some fantastic bars. You know, there's no mistaking that these bars are really good opportunities when we look at bars. Lovely bearish engulfing bar at the high there after a really exhaustive run. Belt hold here. Another hammer here. So the turning points in these markets were fairly evident. You know, the buyers really did come back into play in this area. Sellers came really into play in that area. And we were discussing this in the show, the US show on Thursday. Jeff and I were discussing this with the guys, and one of the guys said, and I said to the room that I was just having you know, the market is obviously long. You know, it was kind of popping up here. The market's obviously long, but I feel really uncomfortable about how the market was pushing forward. And I was really interested in getting a trade to the downside. Now I did manage to get that, and it did push down. But really, again, all we've done is ended up moving into an area that that may well hold up now. You know, this is really like the structural low point here. And Interestingly, I don't think this bar is strong enough to suggest that we do, have the upside to continue the trend to the up to continue the trend long, like we did here and like we did here and like we did here. It's a different looking bar. The way that the price action has only really moved some of the way in to the body of the bearish bar that sold off. But it was fascinating, and I find this market quite an interesting one now, because the reason it sold off here was because Donald Trump was, there was some tension between China and the US, the United States, and Donald Trump really kind of, his speech was very interesting. He attacked China, blamed them for COVID-19, said that they were pillaging all the US ideas, but did not put any significant tariffs or any significant punishment on them. So in the end, if we look at this this price action and how it moved over a very short period, this was during his speech. This bit here was during his speech. So as the market came down, it did end up creating a what looked like a potential buying opportunity when we got let me just make this white, when we got this inverted head and shoulders down here on the 15-minute chart, but very difficult to trade. And got to that point and really managed to pop through, and after popping through, managed to oops, don't want that. Managing to pop through there, and after managing to pop through, we've really just managed to kind of stay within this trend line here. Even that close really got bought up again. So now there's a big question. What's the direction really of travel when we open up on Monday? There's a little trend line up here as well. And I'm interested in this area up here on the FTSE. I'm looking at around about the let's just call it the trend line. I know you guys aren't looking at the same necessarily the same chart as me, but look at on the trend line, and I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, does the market weaken significantly enough from this point to give us an opportunity down? And if we look at this on a 4-hour chart, that would really be along this trend line here, and it would possibly even start creating an inverted head and shoulders in this area as well. Head and shoulders in this area. There's the left shoulder there. There's the head there, and maybe we're sort of like starting to get a right shoulder along this point. The reason I'm uncomfortable about the downside, I was uncomfortable about the upside on Friday, but I'm a bit uncomfortable about the downside, and I'm uncomfortable because this trend line really is in play. And it does kind of like, that possibly creates a different pattern for us, but significantly we're above that particular level there. And the other reason I'm uncomfortable is when I look across the markets, then I don't know where the catalyst is being expressed. Look at the S&P. What happened after Donald Trump's speech was the S&P rallied almost back to its highs. So it swept away any question of downside. It's through this level here. So it's not going to create a lower high here. It could still do it that here, but really, if we're going to look at the S&P, we're going to need to see a fairly significant bar up here to suggest that we are possibly creating the lower high. Pattern doesn't look very palatable for a short. This looks like a long. This looks like the market might well come back down into this area again. Maybe it opens up and starts coming back down again. And in this area, we're really looking to see if there's some sort of reversal here to then trade this one back to the upside. So the S&P doesn't fill me with too much in the way of corroborating evidence. Dow Jones Industrials doesn't really kind of fill me with too much. It looks okay, the Dow Jones. It looks okay if we're looking for downside. Not the worst in the world, but kind of coming through this level here. And you'll see this better on an hourly chart. Information's not brilliant there, is it? This almost suggests the same thing, that any test, in actual fact, we've already had the test, but anything that comes down is much more likely at this point to be bought up again. So if that comes down to test this level along here, there's some sort of horizontal line, then I'd be looking for something that pushed above it. And possibly there's a trade long in the Dow Jones. So if there's a trade long Dow Jones, long S&P, then it's not looking particularly bearish. Now, if I also bring in the VIX, to see what's the kind of fear out there, what's the volatility like? and the VIX just dropped off. You know, all of a sudden, towards the end of the day, Donald Trump was out and the VIX just dropped off. It looked like we were going to get a pickup in the VIX. Looked like it had, you know, potentially even got through some areas here, but it just wasn't sustained. And it's just dropped off. That doesn't suggest to me we're looking for downside either. So I don't really have the best. Oh, and maybe you know, finally, I would look at gold. I'm quite interested in the way the gold chart is moving currently, and gold started to rally as well, but big engulfing bar on the hourly, and there's a little bit of downside. And I'm looking at gold and I'm questioning whether there's any legs in this. I'm sure Ainsley will have a bit more perspective on this, but you know, I still think gold's got a fairly decent chance and shout to come down. I don't think it's necessarily going higher here. Just a question here: will the U.S. current happening riot impact the S&P? No, in my opinion, Mike. No, it won't. You know, this is the thing, and this is what I find quite fascinating about the market right now. It continues to confound any kind of economic gravity. Now, I'm not that, you know, when it came down to the spat with China, it was a big deal. And I was saying to the guys in the room, if Donald Trump comes out and punishes China or puts some tariffs on China or you know, decides that Hong Kong is no longer a trading hub that they're going to do any deals with, that would be bearish for the market. But he stopped short of that. His rhetoric was very, very measured and very clever. And I don't think you'll often hear me say the words Donald Trump. The term Donald Trump and clever in the same sentence.
Yeah, going to say
often.
That's extremely unusual. that's right out of left field.
Did you hear the speech, mate?
No, I didn't, but I saw the result of it. The prick.
Yeah,
he's upset a few of my trades, I've got to say.
Fascinating, mate. Absolutely. It was fascinating that the speech, I was listening to it and I was going, whoa, this doesn't sound good. You know, he came out spitting feathers about, you know, how awful China were. But it was so interesting the way that the market reacts to this stuff. And this is why I say no, Mike, because as much as we think certain events might move the market in a certain direction, when it comes down to it, traders and investors out there are really kind of combing through the detail that they are interested in. And all they are interested in is, does this affect trade? Does the riots in America affect trade? And if you can answer that, then you will have your answer to whether it's going to impact the S&P in the coming week. You know, there's no way. There's no way. The only way that could affect the S&P in the coming week is if all of a sudden it spilled into Washington and there was riots on the White House lawn or something. I don't know, but that does not affect trade. It doesn't even affect the economy. You know, we've got other things that are going on that are affecting the economy. The consumer confidence index on Friday was absolutely it was a complete horror show, and still the market rallied. You know, so there's certain things that I look at and think, well, that should affect it bearishly, and it hasn't. So because of the resilience with the market, and you know, I find it quite tricky. It's going to be quite tricky navigating this market at this particular phase. And we have to really look. Oh, you're welcome, Mike. You have to look at the bigger picture to try and understand what are we going to do here. Because if we look at this FTSE 100 on a monthly chart, then if we draw some of our lines and levels in, that would have been an area that it could have resisted, and it did for a while, and then it went through. Then we had, now we have possibility of this area. You know, that's kind of what I'm looking at now, because everything else is much higher. You know, there's a level over here as well. This will be the that's the primary trend there. This is on a monthly chart. There's the primary trend to the upside. So that is suggesting to me that you know, a sweet spot to really look for the shorts is probably somewhere in here, and that is still 400 pips up minimum. And when you look at that level, then you've got this little trend line. You've got a potential horizontal level here as well. Maybe this goes back even further in time. Yeah, you could probably you know, look at this one and have a look at the horizontal level as a potential area here. It bounces here, it bounces off there, then it breaks through, then it rejects. Now it's breaking through, it bounces here, it bounces here, it comes down. That looks to me like a fairly obvious place that we should be looking at for the short, which until we get there, that suggests we should probably still be on the long side. As confounding and confusing as it appears to be, the price action is telling us that we should be looking long. When we look at the other barometers, S&P and the Dow and possibly gold, if say Ainsley will give us a bit more meat on the bone with that one, and the VIX, you know, all those are suggesting that this rally isn't done. The FTSE does look under pressure, but just a bit of a turnaround in the FTSE, and I'll tell you what I'll look for next week.
Got a bit of a sentiment cycle in there, Ash.
Yeah, but we've looked at that, haven't we, mate? And I wonder whether we still have we're still in that kind of first leg of the sentiment cycle, and we're still yet to come down. That's
where I'm looking. Is that we've had subtle warning and overt warning? Are we in disbelief? And yes. Are we about to tumble?
Yeah, well, I think we are, but I don't think it's yet. And the other thing is, look at this gap here as well. There's a gap that needs filling. Now that's at least 300 pips away. So the minimum we've got out of this potential move is 300 pips. Maybe the maximum's 500. But I wouldn't be looking so keen on the short until we get there. Now look at this other thing. This is one of my favorite patterns. I'm not sure how big this is coming out here. I can't see where my line is here, unfortunately. I could make that chart a bit smaller. This is one of my favorite patterns right here. And what I have in this is a bar that has pushed to the upside, gapped up, rejected a high, and eventually moved slightly lower. So it's probably just slightly down there. Eventually moved just slightly lower. It ends up slightly higher. So it ends up just slightly better. And then we have a bar that does this. Now I think this bar is quite significant. And the reason that I think this bar is the significant one here. Oh, I could have drawn that better, couldn't I, Jeff?
A little bit. Is that new
tool? No, it's not my new tool. I'm using I'm having to use the mouse. My new tool is locked into another screen. This bar is really interesting, and the reason I find this bar interesting is that this 3-bar pattern, you know, in a way should have ended like this. If we're looking at the morning star, if you like, the evening star. The evening star should have ended like this. It should have opened up. In actual fact, that can be green. That's not a problem. It should have opened up. That one's fine. Hold on. Let me just do this properly. Slight gap up. Opens up. Comes down, ends high. But bar 3 should do this to give us our evening star. It should be 2/3 into the range of the body of this bar here, but it's not. You know, look at it. It's around about, it's probably about 50%. Now that sends out a warning signal to me that the upside is much more likely. It's a failed, I call this a false, it's a failed evening star. Although if it was a morning star, I'd call it a false dawn if it had failed at the bottom. But this is a false dusk. That's what I call these patterns. I call this a false dusk. Looks like it should be an evening star. It's not. So at this stage, I'm looking to say that this is still bullish. And if we consider where price is in the trend, then really what price has done has closed above the previous high. Just closes above the previous high here. And now I've got a retest, and now we might have a green light to go. So let's talk about what we need to see. Well, I wouldn't want to trade it just yet. You know, I want some confirmation that this thing's going higher. And what I need for confirmation, what would be enough confirmation for me, is if it breaks through this trend line. You know, if I've got pivots in this area, all the better. You know, if I've got a trade which the pivots have managed to kind of step, if this pivot steps down, which it will do, if price ends up moving above the daily pivot and that trend line, then we've got a green light to go, and we've got a green light to try and trade this long again. So I'll be looking for price to get up here, back and test either, you know, pivot or maybe even right down there. But I'd be okay with all that, creating a some sort of inverted head and shoulders. So that's what I'm going to need to wait for. I can't just go ahead and trade it on open, but I think the price action here is going to be quite interesting. And anything that moves to the downside, I'm still potentially going to be interested right the way down to the weekly pivot for some upside. So I'm long, really. I'm looking long for next week, and I'd like to see how that establishes itself. Just like every week, I'm supple enough and plastic enough to change that if I need to, and start changing my my sentiment. But for right now, I'm still pretty bullish about this market. I don't see how Donald Trump's speech or some of those consumer numbers not pushing this market down and it holding where it is can be anything but bullish. I find it just you know, beyond belief, really. Yeah, Mike, exactly. Yeah, it looked like a typical evening star, didn't it? But it's not, because it failed. It's a failed evening star. So so that's pretty much what I've got, mate. I don't think there's anything else that's that I'm looking at for right now. I suppose, you know, as I say, that the one aspect of this is the daily chart. I would have thought where if I looked at the daily chart, then that may lead me to just wait a little while. You know, maybe price does need to come back and test this point down here before we look for a long, and the price action will tell us that as it opens. If the hourly starts to shape up above a pivot in the trend line, I'll trade it. If not, then I might even wait for that area and see if there's a long here instead. The final thing that what's that, buddy?
No, I didn't say anything, mate.
Oh, sorry, mate. The final thing that I would say on this is the only thing at this stage, things could change, but the only thing at this stage which would change my view and start looking for downside is one, potentially something that goes on with America and China. There's developments on that, and the second thing would be the pound. If the pound was to significantly strengthen, then, which is very unlikely, then I would change my view.
Oh, I don't know so much.
You like the look of the pound, do you, mate?
Only from a technical point of view. I agree with you. From a fundamental point of view, gee whiz. It's hard
I mean, it's, you know, the pound is
a fire underneath it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible. And to be honest, that, you know, the Brexit talks are going so appallingly, and Barnier's already come out and said that you know, they're pretty close to no deal, and unless the UK shapes up. All the indication points for further weakness, you know, fundamentally, I think, with the pound. So I'm still looking at a potential short, which, if that's the case, you know, if the pound does come down and we are looking for short opportunities in the pound, then the FTSE should actually pick up and continue to go long. So again, you know, I don't have any reason at this stage to go short. Get me up another 350 pips, maybe 500 pips in the FTSE, then, you know, maybe we'll be talking a different. I'll be expressing a different tone. But for right now, I think we might have a little bit of an early run to the upside in equities before the summer sell-off.
Happy days.
Yeah, that's my thinking. Somebody asking about Brent. Now, yeah, Brent, I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because I forgot to mention that Brent or oil generally is another potential market mover. And this one, again, Ainsley's much more qualified than I am to discuss things like oil and gold. But really, you know, there's no doubt that the pattern is pretty bullish here. We've got a left shoulder there. We've got the head there. I'm not sure where that right shoulder is, but it's somewhere in that area, I'm guessing, which does mean that it's got a chance of coming back. But there is a trend line that's running right along here, right up here. And we've tested that level, and we continue to push higher. There's a possible break of the trend here. So that still looks pretty solid. So, but there's no problem there. The gap is the big elephant in the room, but that's still got a little ways to run. I mean, that's only this is on the futures market, so maybe the gap won't bother so many people. But it could actually come up to that point before I'll be looking at downside in Brent. So not even oil. WTI, I don't know how that's looking, but not even. I'm presuming it's fairly similar. Not even
it's
oil.
broken out too.
It is.
It's broken out. So and as I say, we're gonna have to get your opinion on it, Ainsley, because you know much more about this stuff than I do. But what I would say about oil is that I wouldn't want to get caught on the upside, particularly. I think that there's probably another leg down, but I think the timing's early for the leg down, as I do with the FTSE. So I think both the FTSE, maybe the S&P, the Dow, all the same, and oil are going to take another leg lower. But I just don't think it's yet. I think we might get another couple of weeks of upside in the sentiment of the market. So that pushes the Aussie higher for me. It pushes the yen lower potentially for me. It pushes the equities higher, oil higher. Gold, I would have thought at best goes sideways, and then in a couple of weeks' time, I'd be reversing those positions to start the sell-off, and I think it could be quite a significant one.
Well, what's interesting, Ash, is that we've got oil. It had a run up on Friday. Gold had a run up on Friday. S&P had a run up on Friday. It's all gone where you shouldn't think it to go. And it's all gone together, and it's really odd. But I guess it was the last trading day of the month. It just sort of like, with Trump, open his doors. Oh my Lord! But it is interesting. I've got to say that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And it is, it creates a challenge for us in many respects. But I suppose the information doesn't suggest that we reverse position just yet. And I don't really want to get too far out in front of the market. I did try and get out in front at the end of last week, and thankfully it worked out. But actually after Trump made his speech, I closed my short positions, and now I'm looking for the long again because it didn't. I got no follow through, which is I was expecting. I was expecting follow through. I thought Trump would come out and there'd be a big furore about the US and China, and everything would turn around, but didn't happen. So this market continues to remain irrational, and because I want to stay solvent, I'm going to follow it.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught on the wrong side. I mean, yeah, it's just been, and all you need is Trump threatening China.
Exactly.
That's all you need. I mean,
that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah. Well, did Trump not get the message that one of the largest owners of US Treasury bonds is China?
Oh, I think he probably did, which is probably why he curbed his language.
It's just been unreal. This guy, I mean, what he's been threatening, and you said, as you said, he came pretty close to making threats, but didn't quite get there, which is the interesting. He didn't quite get there. But on the back of that, I think it's, I mean, if you looked at gold, you looked at Brent, let's just look at gold while you're there. So you've tied it all together. You got a gold chart there, Ash?
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
So if you go down to 4 hourly, because then you've got a better view of what's happened there.
Futures okay?
I looked at, yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. We saw it come down during the week, and because with everything's happening, we expect it to sort of like bottom out. It sort of it went below 1700, but it didn't stay there. Bounced straight back up again.
Yeah.
Didn't like that 1700. And then as the week wore on, it just kept edging up and up and up and up and up and up. And then Trump opened his mouth, and there almost seemed to be this flight to a little bit more of stability.
Yes. I mean, I've got. I mean, you may want to take the charts because it's really kind of your expertise in this area. But my big question on gold is what is going on with this inflation play, and is there an inflation play? Or are we early on the inflation? I mean, people seem to be sort of like anticipating inflation, and that's why one of the reasons that we know.
Yeah, for sure they're anticipating it. I mean, how can you not have it with, half the country almost unemployed. Well, slight exaggeration, obviously, but huge unemployment, businesses not feeling stable, businesses closing, and this is globally, not even just the US or, you know, individual countries. We're all going to feel it, and we're all going to feel it in the next 12 months, unless governments print more money. Obviously,
are we early though, Ainsley, on trying to get into that?
I think we're early on an inflation play.
Yeah.
But you look at gold. You look at gold, and I know this is really hard to get my head around. You know, gold's playing out exactly as the seasonals expect for an election year. And
do you know what? Don't talk to Jeff about seasonals. In fact, Jeff might have a comment to make about seasonals.
Where's
not
the
on
dollar
gold,
index?
to be fair.
Where's the dollar index close this month?
on my gold chart, election year on gold for the last couple of days of May and into June, up until the 30th of June, you seasonally has been a rally in gold.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So that is an interesting thing, interesting play.
That is an interesting
I'm as nervous as all heck to have that as a trading
opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to go jump in because, hey, the seasonals are like that. I'm watching it really carefully. But what I might do is might flick over to my screen. It's not MT4, but what I'm keen to do is show two levels on two time frames side by side, which I can't do on this. So if I could just share a screen there. I can't actually.
Oh, I might need to give it to you, do I?
Yeah.
Okay. Jeff normally has to give me the screen. So if I stop, try it now. Does that help?
Okay, share screen. Host, disabled participant, screen sharing.
All right, no problem. Leave this with me. If I. Oh no, hold on. No, that's not right. No, you're good at this stuff, Jeff. You get the practice with me, don't you?
I'm having a look. What do I need to do here? No, you should have full power.
Yeah, that's why I just.
Maybe it's because you're a London. Oh, sorry, that's a song.
Maybe wrong song.
Maybe it's because Paul.
Yes, he's the host.
Control.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Done. Okay.
All right, no problem. I will. I'll send him a message.
Oh, I think he's in bed, mate.
No, he's texting me in the background.
He's he's actually.
What do you guys need?
Just to give Ainsley power. I can't do it here. I can't give Ainsley the screen, and she can't take it.
The screen. When you say that I prefer that to I can't do it here. I can't give Ainsley the screen. Well, who wants to give Ainsley the screen anyway? Let's be honest. So I need to share screen. I can share screen. I don't know if I can give Ainsley the screen. Let me see what I can do here.
Can you make her more powerful? She's disappeared.
Oh,
you did well.
I mean, at least I kept her in the room.
You're a magician.
Let's give Julian some power so he can be a co-host. Look, I don't think that I got rid of Ainsley by mistake. Lots in the room, guys. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. I can see lots of chat and lots of questions. You guys are quite funny. You guys are having a great night. Dominic, how you doing? Oh, gosh. Lots going on according to these questions. Gosh, guys, I suggest you give Julian a chat and I'll see if I can find out what's going on with Ainsley and get it back for you guys, okay?
Okay, mate, no problem. How do we do that, Jeff? You
I need to do anything else because...
Well, I don't know if we can give Jules power, but if you can control the screen.
Julian, I've given Julian power, so he's okay.
Okay. Hello, Julian. He may be talking with.
He may be away from his desk. You want to take
maybe
the
away from
screen,
me.
Jeff? I don't know if you've got anything that you want to get to here first, and maybe we can
Well,
come back.
I can
Ainsley,
certainly cover some technicals whilst Ainsley comes back. No drama at all.
let's do that. Let's get to that, because this will no doubt be a kind of revolving story that we can kind of get nicely tied up at the end.
Okay, let's attack from the front, shall we? Look, what a crazy week for me, really. At the end of the day, I was this time last Sunday thinking this is going to be a snack of a week, because I had some beautiful rectangles. I had some wonderful, I don't think I had any triangles, which will please Julian, but I had some very nice market structures that I thought, okay, we're going to hit the top of these and we're going to trade it short after a lower high, or we're going to hit the bottom of this one and we're going to trade it long after a higher low. And come Monday, everything just turned into SH1T, because all of the structures pretty much broke out. This one to the high side, Euro Yen. And I was trying to trade it short under this bar here. And that turned out to be a wrong move. And we had two other wrong moves during the week, one winner only out of the whole week. So I had a pretty crappy week, I've got to say. Unfortunately, we don't have to say that too often. But I think we've got a very, very weak yen. We've got what I consider to be the US dollar turning right around and going very, very short. And I'm in that trade. I'm still in that trade short, actually. But I woke up on Saturday morning having gone to bed. Oh, let's have a look at that. Having gone to bed on Friday evening on reasonably good terms with myself, and found out that the US dollar versus the yen had just completely turned around. And as you've
Astonishing,
explained,
mate, wasn't it?
That's down to Donald Trump, and that's why
Yes.
I'm happy to call him a prick, because that's not what's supposed to happen, right? At the end of the day, this was supposed to disappear. So I'm really a little bit on the confused side about that. And when I look at what's happened in the US with the dreadful situation that they've got now, with riots all over the place, I haven't heard any good news out of the States for ages. We've got them printing money like it's going out of fashion. We've got them as 103,000 have died from coronavirus, and millions more have contracted it. And
they're reopening.
And they're reopening. That's
Yeah.
probably why they can even have a glimmer of hope about them. But
yeah, I mean, my point with that is that what happens when the next wave starts, because it will be coming, surely.
Yeah, so how can the dollar rally, frankly? And I know the yen is as weak as lolly water. That's true, but I just don't understand how that can happen. But anyway, that's not for me to ponder, really. I didn't do it. The market did it. The market will, as it does. I'm still in the trade. I've got my stops up here. So I guess there's still hope in this particular situation. And we are at the top of the range and taking on these highs again. So I'll be really interested to see how this opens on tomorrow morning. But I've still got this incredible bearish attitude on it. And all I think we need is a little bit of a boost here, or even common sense to apply. And this should go and retest these lows down around about the 105 mark. And beyond that, we could even disappear at some stage. So I'm still extremely bearish that, and I can't quite, as I say, understand why it's rallied. That said, I can also probably say the same about Aussie CAD, which was one of my 3 failed trades this week, where I saw, of course, trading counter trend has its issues. There's no doubt about that. And we had a false break of resistance here. I admit that it was a very, very long time coming. In fact, a full week, and maybe even a little bit longer than a week, before it proved to me that it was potentially going to be a false break, where we came back inside underneath the resistance level and then retested it. I thought that was a reasonably safe position to take. Incorrect. That went bang and took out my stops. So I didn't have a good time there either. The reason I was a little bit bearish the Aussie was on rumor that that China was considering imposing tariffs on coal and iron ore out of Australia. And that immediately gave me, and I've been speaking about that for a couple of weeks, in fact, a few weeks, when the China did impose tariffs on beef out of 4 of our abattoirs. They also did the same on barley to the tune of 80%. And I said at the time, look, you know, there are other markets for barley, and India snapped up pretty much, I don't know about all of those orders, but certainly quite a few of those orders. So I wasn't too concerned at that point. But when they started talking coal and iron ore, that's a whole different ballgame. And I guess I was trying to get ahead of the curve here. And as soon as I saw that opportunity, I got in short Aussie CAD. I tried to find positions on Aussie everything really at that point in time, but that one made the most sense to me. So I tried, well, failed to get that one in. I haven't given up on that. And certainly if China does escalate that threat of imposing tariffs on coal and, as importantly, iron ore, then the Aussie won't be at 91 cents here against the CAD. It'll be probably at 75, something like that, very, very quickly. And that can be said of pretty much anything against the Aussie at the moment. But it's all speculation and all rumor and all I don't know. On the other side of the coin, if that doesn't happen, then the Aussie has merit, in particular against things like the despised pound. The euro is a little bit tougher, I would have thought. And I know this is a question in the box about the euro. I can see upside in the euro at the moment. And the question mark is why. That's not for me to answer. I don't know from a fundamental point of view, but it certainly has broken out of the range that it's been trading in since April, or the whole month of April, and pretty much the whole month of May as well. So I see that getting up to here to not only challenge the top of our descending channel, but also these highs through here, which is also a reasonable level around about the 112. Well, let's call it around about, yeah, there-ish. Let's say 112. 112. I can definitely see the euro going to 112, and maybe even by the end of the week against the dollar. Forget that dollar rally. I'll forget that dollar rally. So the dollar's weak, you know, essentially, and I see no reason why it can rally. And as I said to you earlier, Ash, the dollar index, despite the seasonals, has closed lower for the month of May, and that kind of pleases me. And I'm now looking for that to continue. I think once it has crashed below that, well, it's really got rid of the 100 level. It's now down around the low 98s, I think, or mid 98s. And I see that continuing. So I see the euro US dollar has got a little bit left in it. Getting into that right now is a little bit tough on the back of that bar. So you want to be looking for retracement, I would imagine, before you got into that long, if that were to be your penchant. Pound CAD, we got out of that finally, having traded it for the last, wow, is it 4 weeks? I think it's 4 weeks. I can't remember which one of these bars I got in on. That one, we got in there on the break and retest. That's exactly the same trade as Aussie CAD. If you want to have a look at that, it's exactly the same trade. One's gone for 500 pips. The other one's got stopped out. There you go. What can I say? Not a lot. So yeah, we're out of pound CAD now. And look, I think the pound has got merit from a technical standpoint only, of course. And I agree with you, Ash. From a fundamental point, it's just garbage at the moment. And for no particular reason, I've just got this technical image in my head that says, have a look at the monthly chart, and the monthly chart is around about that 123 mark, or even lower than that if you want, showing a very, very strong support level. And we've bounced off that substantially back in, when was that? Back in March, and we've been in consolidation pretty much ever since, going up and down in the one spot there. But I think, and I'm in this trade as a matter of fact, and again, I think Trump has had something to do with knocking me off my momentum here. I'm just in profit here. I think maybe I'm just behind. I'm not sure. Around about entry anyway. But I definitely see the monthly pivot, and saw the monthly pivot as a target on Friday. But no such luck. Well, no such Donald Trump luck, I suppose, is the way I put it. But regardless of what Trump said,
Calling that dumb luck, are you?
Yeah, well, you could. You absolutely could. I can understand why you would think that, Ainsley. Yes.
Careful, that could be a Twitter fact check.
It could be, and I'd encourage that. I would. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing, that story? My God. Is
I
Twitter off there?
I think the one that followed was even more amazing, because somebody dared to actually get him to, ask him to check his facts, that he's trying to have an executive order about social media companies.
That's what I mean. What's in Twitter's head? I mean, Donald Trump means to Twitter a whole bunch of money because he's kept them going incredibly well over the last 4 years, basically. So, I'd be very, very cautious of taking him on if I were Twitter, because there's other platforms. Didn't I know that?
Anyway. There are. And there it comes back down to that, in a nutshell, is how much he manipulates everything around him. He threatens. He's a bully.
He's definitely a bully. He's all sorts of things. And if he's listening now, then Donald, mate, lift your game.
I don't think he did after what you just called him before.
What did I call him? A prick. Yeah, I did.
You did. Strike two.
I think I can still beat him on the golf course, but we'll see. See how we go.
Anyway.
That's where he spends most of his time, apparently. Yeah, so back to the pound. I'm still in that trade, and I really am looking for the top of this range. I don't suspect that it's, going to create any big trades out of this, but I thought that there was a nice little run up, about 300 pips, and there we could just throw our fate to the wind, having some money in the bank, and if we were fortunate enough for it to rally beyond there, as the dollar sinks, as I'm predicting it will, then happy days. As far as this week's concerned, and that's kind of the story of last week, I think I'm still in dollar yen, I'm still in pound. There's one other that I can't even recall, but anyway, it's not a relevant thing. We're just about break even on that as well, I think. The euro we've spoken about. Pound yen, that's the other one I'm in actually, as a break and retest of this resistance trend line, and we're looking again for the monthly pivot to get our money in the bank, and then everything beyond that's a bonus. We've got to get there first, but the weakness in the yen and the potential for the pound to bounce off that level that I've just spoken about, I think is probably worth a little bit of a flutter, and that's exactly why I've done that on the back of a technical, and bouncing off the weekly pivot didn't hurt at all. So that's still there. This week I'm an Aussie short fan again, and a lot will depend, as I said, on what China does. So Aussie Kiwis won. We're at the top of the range here. We've broken through resistance. So this is an obvious one for me to look for a break back below and retest the trend line, give us a lower high here, and that will be a short entry. Pound Aussie, we got out of this trade when 10 days ago, something like that. We got out here, or here actually, exactly here. And that was, Pound Aussie's just been an absolute gold mine for us in the last couple of months. I think I need to leave it alone now, because I'm not 100% on direction. And again, it relies a lot on what China does versus Australia, and if the pound can actually rally despite its low stocks as well at the moment. So I'm best to leave this alone. I think maybe it can find its way back up to here if China does impose those tariffs, then it may be up to here. But that's a long way from now, and there'll be other opportunities on that one. Aussie dollar testing those highs, as we can see at that resistance level. Can't believe that I had that exact level 66.75 in my actual target when I got out of this long trade here, having got in it down here. Yeah, got there. And I said when it got there, I'd be looking for shorts. And that's exactly what I'm doing at the moment. The daily chart is not offering anything to suggest that that is the case, but there is a little bit of a top forming here. So as per the normal, I'll be looking counter trend, of course, coming back under here with the double top in hand, if we can make a decent one on a decent time frame, and giving me the lower high. That would be my my invitation to go counter trend short on the Aussie. Aussie yen's exactly the same position. Again, the yen's as weak as it has been, it's very, very difficult to trade that trade, I've got to say. But if there was to be a decent double top sitting here and that lower high comes into play, then maybe I can think about that. Euro Aussie is the other one, and I'm not really thinking anything but long Euro Aussie at the moment. And I know that kind of sounds a bit weird, but I do see, as I said before, that upside potential in the Euro and the downside potential in the Aussie. So that logically has me looking for a long trade. I can't see it on the daily chart right now, although there's a little bit of a statement from the bulls here, and now a higher low, sorry, a higher high. No higher low to speak of, but maybe this is it. Maybe that's it. The candle is kind of counterintuitive for most people, not so for me. I don't mind that, and I will have a good look at that in the morning if the market hasn't gone nuts in the meantime. A little bit of a hint here that we've got a very, very big bullish bar there. We've come off the weekly pivot. We've settled on Friday's daily pivot. Wouldn't surprise me to see this rally back to the top of this range, and if I can find a way into that, I will most definitely look at it. Maybe the weekly pivot goes to where? Yeah, it won't move too far, maybe in this vicinity somewhere. I should use my my market scanner to check that, but yeah, that probably won't move too far. And if I can get my entry above it, which I probably can, that may be the trade tomorrow morning on the 4-hour chart for me. Euro Aussie long trading that bar. It'll depend on, no, it won't depend on anything really, because the weekly pivot will certainly come down, one would thought, to around about there. So that's probably the only one I'm going to leave you with, guys. Euro Aussie long, and I'll be looking at that candle in the morning. In fact, I'll probably place that order. And your first take profit's probably at the top of that range, around about the 168, 168.60, let's call it that. So there you go. That's my little trip around the technical areas. As I said last week, those technical situations looked absolutely plumb for me, and not one panned out. What a heap of garbage. Bye-bye, May. Hello, June. That's what I say. What about you, Ainsley? Oh, Julian, you with us?
Yeah. I've just been sitting here listening to you, Jeff.
Have you? Isn't it wonderful? I had a bad week, mate. I didn't enjoy the week at all. And I'm happy to see May go.
I understand. Maybe I can put some color on the Euro chart. Am I allowed to do that? Would you mind putting the Euro
daily
chart up, the daily, with some bar charts rather than candles? I'm sorry to be
Yep.
heretical.
That's okay. I'll even get rid of all these lines for you.
Oh, that would be brilliant, Jeff. That almost is. Thank you. That's perfect. I want to highlight one bar, if I may, which is the bar on the 20th, if I may, if you'll pardon the expression. The bar on the 20th. If you could highlight that one.
Hang on, I'll get a pen. I think I've got a pen. Yep, I do. But that will eliminate me. Which is the 20th? That one or that one?
That one.
That one?
Yep. Perfect. So I was just talking to my students about this, right? And I said to them that there was a couple of clues that something different was going on in the euro, because the comment was, yeah, but it's been in a trading market for a while. And I said, absolutely. And on the day before, I think, which is the 18th, when it had that, I'm trying to remember what you guys call that. That's like a shooting star, right? Candle pattern. But for me, it's a bar chart that fails, right? The key thing is that that's exactly what should have happened if we were sitting in a trading range. And I suspect a few people got the wrong positions on that day. The reason why I'm saying that is the next day, it actually blew straight through that excess point and almost pretty much, I think, depending on when you closed it, closed at least there or thereabouts to be above. And so sort of disproving that whole rejection bar that happened the day before. So why this was key for me is that this triggered a thought process in my mind, and it also triggered the ring low that happened 3 days later, and the point at which, thank you, the point at which I got long. And so last week in the euro was actually very interesting for me. And on top of that, if you went to Euro Swiss, do you keep that sticky? Will those things still stay there?
No, but we can certainly replace them. Euro Swiss. Let me see if I've got a Euro Swiss chart somewhere. We'll make one.
Thank you. There we go. We've got some bars, just tied it up on a daily, and we're there. Don't worry about playing with it, Jeff. Just stick it in there. That'll be fine. Just stick it on a daily,
Okay.
and that'll do, and then squeeze it up a bit. Owl's is a bit too hectic for me. So what's really interesting is that if you look at we look at the Euro Swiss, perfect. That's great, Jeff, as it is. So if you look at that Euro Swiss chart, that actually took off a couple of days beforehand. So going back through time, you'll notice, in fact, the Euro Swiss is beginning to look a little bit like that sterling Aussie that's unfolding, that's setting up at the moment. And there was a huge up bar in Euro Swiss. So what's that? 3 or 4 times the average daily range. Massive up bar. So I got long in that massive up bar and waited. And I've also added to the position 2 other times as well too, but certainly the key one for me was the one I added. And if you could just highlight the one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, so we took those trades on Tuesday morning. And there was a ring low on Tuesday morning that got triggered, that one. Right, so 2 trades. One was the underlying long, and secondly was the was that ring low. Now, what was interesting about both of those 2 things is that they were both euro trades, right? And I think what was also interesting is that something different was going on in both cases. Now, you know, great, and the Euro Swiss worked out really well for us, and we, you know, waterfalled away into, I don't know, big figure or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but we did very well out of the trade, and we had a couple of positions on, and also in that euro chart as well too. If you wouldn't mind going back to that, the key point about both of these 2 charts is that something strange happened in both this chart and the one in the euro, and I'm not sure many people saw it. And the key metric for me on the euro daily chart was that day on the 19th, where we had the tail day the day before on the 18th, and on the 19th we blew straight through that tail day. That was a sign for me the market was getting long. I'm starting to have a different opinion, and maybe it was going up, and then bless it, it came back and printed a really nice higher low on a ring low pattern in the world of, well, that's a bit of a classic, and then ran away. I don't know what's that.
Where was I when this was happening?
Like, yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Is that I think everybody fell asleep at the wheel in the euro.
Monday morning. That's the thing right there, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay.
So interesting. And so just highlighting that occasionally the majors can do their thing. What was interesting for me was that all the clues came back to that day on the 19th with that price action bar. And then the market gave you a second chance, which was spectacular and very sweet of it. So I have to say that I am with you with the dollar yen. I saw the breakdown on whichever day it was, Thursday, and it wasn't one of my finest hours. I think we got stopped out on that trade. We didn't have a stop as generous as yours. I had a very tight stop, and I'm still a huge believer in a lower dollar yen. I think it's going much lower, down to 95 or something like that. But I think it's got to take a bit of time to get there. I don't know how it's going to do it. Maybe we have to wait till August, but we'll see. For the time being, the price action on Friday was sufficient to convince me, number one, to be out of a short, and maybe I'll have a think about even a long potentially on Monday, but that doesn't, or Tuesday, but that doesn't seem to make much sense with me. So I might just stick to my knitting elsewhere. So really, the key things for me have been and still remain that gold could still go up. I understand Ainsley's position completely. But the whole market's short of it. The small speculators are very, very long of it, historically long of it. It's an over-owned asset. It's a mainstream story. Does that mean to say it's going to go down? Nope. Does that mean to say that we may have a retest and then we might go down? Well, that's a possibility. Does that mean also we're going to 1850, which is the sort of target anyway? And then you're going, well, actually, that's equally a possibility as well too. So there was a nice ring low formation in gold on the buy side, but I'm still really nervous about gold, and so therefore I didn't take that one, and I'm still looking to stay short and try and get short. I am short at the moment with tights. Well, no, actually, they're not even tight stops. It has to go back to the old highs again. I could well be wrong on that. There's a possibility I am, but I'm just got this sense that something's not quite right in that gold market, and we've got a long way to go to the seasonal pattern kicks in. Really, I know that Ainsley says it does have a seasonal bullish pattern in election years. I think everybody could be given a pass on this particular year as being a classic year for some seasonal patterns. And I'm sort of, it's nice that we actually completely disagree, but equally so have trades on which were equally valid and for different reasons. So we'll see what unfolds. I could easily be wrong in gold and it could easily go up, but I'm not sure. The underlying gold miners have all hit significant resistance points on chart setup, so I'm sort of going, well, okay, maybe the miners seem to have hit a wall. They are up 100% since March, so that's not such a bad performance. Again, not that impressive really, the gold market underlying spot performance when you actually look at what's been going on in some of those mining stocks. So really interesting times, interesting things. I'm sort of with Ash. I'm not really bearish on stocks, but I could see them low on the back of apparently America's on fire this weekend.
What's your take on that, Julian? Let's say that's prolonged, as it may well be, and escalates further than it is. What does that do?
Jeff, it does what it always does. The first thing you look at is what's the price of the S&P on Monday morning.
There you go.
History is only made when the S&P either goes up or goes down a lot. History is never
Right.
made if the S&P goes quiet. Everybody will forget about it in 3 months' time. And I'm not trying to be, that sounds really flippant, everybody out there, and I apologize. I'm not trying to be flippant. I've seen riots in America, I think, on 3 other different occasions. And they've often been caused by a similar situation whereby a black person was killed or inadvertently attacked for some reason or another. I remember the LA riots back in, God, I'm going to say the late 90s, but it might have been a bit later than that, that caused riots across the entire country for days on end, on the back of a couple of people being badly handled by the Californian Highway Police. So these things seem to happen in America from time to time. I think it's a bad time for it to happen in front of an election. I think Trump has a bit of a problem. He won the last election on the back of an amazing social media presence and proper targeting of voters. Well, now everybody's caught up. So now what's his new gig in town? I'm not sure he's got one right now. He must just try and scrape through on personality alone in November. How much fun that will be. So I don't have a big read on what's going on, Jeff, and let's see what happens on Monday with the S&P. It could be something that tops the S&P out. I don't know. I don't know why people would feel nervous about this. Yeah, okay, I know there's a few riots in a few cities, but that doesn't tend to affect GDP that much. I think there's other things going on.
If he were to come out and I'm sure he regrets saying it, but the looting starts and so does the shooting.
Mm.
Is he really going to do that?
Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate term.
Yes. I would have thought so. I mean, that's a Trumpism, isn't it? That's a foot in mouth disease thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't look. It's really so jurisdictional wise, he can't do a lot. Right? If they're rioting in
Are
Washington,
you going to tell him that, or am I going to tell him?
but jurisdiction wise, the governors have the right to do everything they can. He says he's offered the military. Well, unfortunately, there is actually a law that the military can't get involved. It has to be the National Guard, because the military can't be deployed in a domestic sense in America. That is actually in the Constitution. So they need the National Guard to be deployed. And in order to deploy the National Guard, who have very little experience of controlling riots, right, you're really better off leaving it to the police, because that's sort of their gig. And I'm going, okay, it's really down to what the governor thinks, quite honestly. It's not really what Donald Trump thinks about these things. He can say as much as he wants, say it's awful or it's brilliant or whatever he wants to say. But at the end of the day, unless they call in the military or they ask the president for direct federal help, which they'll never do as a governor, because then they look weak, it's the governor's job to handle this.
No matter what, it's fascinating. And the likes, you know, I can't recall a time in history in my 63 years where things like Brexit, Trump, all of these, COVID-19, you know, it's just tumultuous what's been going on in the last 4 years.
Jeff, I think you're looking at it through rose-tinted spectacles. The current
you think it's worse than that?
Oh, no. Look, I think it's no. I think there's been heaps of other problems. You know, the breakup of the exchange rate mechanism in the late 90s was financially incredibly traumatic for a lot of people, and led to a terrible recession. So I'm sort of actually late 90s.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't trading then, so I didn't take as much notice.
You know, I was sitting there and the interest rates in Paris went from 5% to 1,000% in a day.
Wow.
That's quite painful if you're running French franc swaps at the time and trying to fund them. I do recall having a couple of interesting conversations with the treasurer and the bank I was working at. So there's a look, it's these things happen from time to time. Every generation tends to throw out something slightly different, and this is our special one for our generation. I don't think this is over yet, but it is in New Zealand apparently. So is it too early to declare victory when you only have one active case? I think we can probably get fairly close to declaring victory on it, which is awesome.
I'd run with that if I were you. Take it. Yeah, take it.
Well, I am thinking about it, and I'm not trying to be smug, because that would be really bad and really rather insensitive of me. But I am very pleased that we appear to have had a prime minister who, for one reason or another, perhaps it's luck, perhaps it's amazingment, has actually put us in a position whereby we're free. And we're one of the few countries in the world that are absolutely free of this and have sort of kicked it. So that's awesome.
Mm.
And, it is pretty good.
The sad fact is, of course, nobody can come and enjoy New Zealand and find out what an amazing country it is, because in fact we're not allowed to let anybody in.
But we can. It looks like that Trans-Tasman bubble is going to happen soon.
It is, and it'll start with flights to Tasmania, Jeff. So the good news
no,
is
you're not coming
to
here.
Queenstown.
Yeah, look, I'm looking.
Queenstown.
I'm actually looking forward to that. Which Queenstown? You mean Queenstown, New Zealand, or Queenstown? We've got a Queenstown as well, you know.
Oh, okay. No, I was talking about the one in New Zealand.
Yeah, I know.
Because you know, isn't it obvious that all the Australians are going to come to New Zealand now?
Yeah, pretty.
Well, we can't go to Queensland. Queensland border's still shut, so we've got to go to somewhere.
Exactly, which is a problem, right? So that nobody can go winter holidays in Brisbane. Oh no.
Oh, what a shame.
Which is the reason why they're going to open up the islands. You know, let's get to Tahiti instead and Fiji. Much better.
Well, they've done pretty well. We are. But I've got I'll just add my 2 cents first. While we're still looking at a gold chart, I'll just say I'm pretty nervous as well. I'm nervous about the gold. Like I said, I'm not even. I look at the seasonals and it says yes, it should rally for the month of June and it should do this and it should do that. By the same token, it should have broken down. I was expecting it to break down more than it did, and it hasn't, and it's just sort of hung back into that level. It got to 1700. it it went a little bit low, but it didn't close below 1700. And we've had that all week. And I'm just looking at it going, we've gone sideways now for quite a few weeks, which is doing my head in. But it's not going down either. It comes down a little bit, then it goes back up, and it goes down, it comes back up. And it's just sort of muddling at the moment. We also call that consolidation, by the way, a technical term. But yeah, it just seems to be treading water there for a little bit. I try and get a little bit excited as it takes off again, but yeah, it's just not. It's just not. So
the interesting thing is, both of us are quite nervous about the trade, but I'm pretty sure that both of us have the trade on.
We both do.
Exactly.
But
so there's a good example, folks. Oh, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with having both trades on, for the record. If for anybody out there who's now completely confused because two different traders have said two different things, you do have the ability to put two positions on. So whoever you agree with, if you can't make your mind up, well, I'll just go with both of them, providing they both have stop losses. Then you'd be very unfortunate for both of us to get both of the trades to get stopped out. I think when gold goes, it's going to go somewhere. So I'm fairly convinced that if it goes down, it's going to do $150.
Can we quote you on that? When it goes somewhere.
Exactly, and I'm also fairly convinced that if Ainsley's right, this is going to 1850 as an easy target. So one way or another, you're going to get some mileage out of it. You just got to make sure you're the right side of it.
Yeah, it's a bit like oil at the moment. Holy moly! I mean, all you need is a little bit of tension, US-China tension, to get oil going in the right direction as well. But
maybe there's quite a lot available. If you want some, there's quite a lot around.
I've been looking at that's the thing. I mean, go to a 4-hourly chart, for God's sake. It just thank you.
Make you feel better, doesn't it?
So there you go. That's what oil looks like after you get some US-China tensions. Bang.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the number on the right-hand side, Ainsley. That are you looking? Is that WTI?
Yeah,
that's
one
because WTI is a bit of a shitty one. That doesn't quite. There's actually not where the June contract in WTI is trading.
Yeah, so that's
contract is trading.
This brokerage. What are you on? IFS?
This one is IFS.
IFS. Yes.
IFS does okay for Brent, but not for the WTI. I don't know quite what's going on with this.
So what would you like WTI on that one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's better. Yes, that's one I like.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I've had a week of listening to Russia's going to continue with their cuts. Then they've decided. Then a couple of the big guys have decided, no, we're not going to continue with the cuts because we can't. And just like, oh God. And then halfway through the week, the little storage capacity issue raised its head again. But one of the things with threatening China, which has made the shale oil guys in the US very, very nervous, is they've got a deal with China of $52 billion worth of oil over the next 2 years. They really don't want that to disappear.
Probably not.
However, yeah.
At what price?
Well, yeah, good question.
It'll be a little higher than $35.
So 52 billion over 2 years is a lot. I've been reading some of the pundits are saying that they doubt it was ever going to be filled, and I think there was just a lot at stake. And I think Trump has just backed himself into a corner, and there was a lot of lashing out, a lot of almost threats, but nothing eventuated, right? So yeah, all you need is, it's almost like, I don't know, somebody bombing a tanker in the Middle East. You need that kind of thing just to sort of like boost the market a bit. And threatening China is exactly what happened and moved the market. So as you can see, the whole week was up and down, up and down, and up and down as we got to that 34.50 mark, and then it just sort of came back down again and retested. But who knows? It's at the moment, and as we know, oil at the moment is such a sensitive thing. You can see how easily influenced it is with just a couple of, or it wasn't a couple of words, a couple of threats from Trump, and away it went. So let's see how we go. As you said, May, let's close the door on May and see where we go to with June. So
Yeah, good riddance. Wreck on.
it was a bad week, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't have fun. I didn't have fun at all.
No, but yeah. Look, I've stuck my toe back into oil, but let me tell you, I'll be tightening up that stop to break even pretty quickly. On Monday morning anyway, because it's just as likely to come flying back down on me again. So, you know, it's there, it's tradable, but the thing that confounded me the most was Russia saying they're going to continue with the cuts because they needed to. Alberta in Canada, they've cut 1 million barrels per day from their production, which is a quarter of their production. Everybody's cutting, and then all of a sudden you get some of these Russian oligarchs that just say, yeah, well, actually, that doesn't suit our business model. We need to pump. And it's just like, you've got to be joking. But anyway, the market will speak for itself.
You've got to break out. What are you worried about?
So if I could just, to give Ainsley a break for a minute, because she's clearly getting very emotional about the state of the oil market.
I am. It's not going anywhere. It's been up and down and up and down.
Okay, so can I do the things that I'm looking at for the week ahead?
Yes, please.
So interestingly, I have just looked at a couple of things, and I think the Euro Aussie is looking very interesting for a long, which is very counter trend at the moment.
Oh, hang on.
Hang on, that was what you were saying.
That's what I was saying, yes.
Brilliant. And Sterling Aussie is also a long. And Jeff, I'm really sorry, mate. I've got to go with a long on cable as well. Is that exactly what you were saying as well too?
That's
is
exactly
that like
what I was saying.
we are now BFFs, right?
Oh, well, just don't mind me.
BSF.
Best
What's
friends
that?
forever, Jeff.
BFF. Best friends forever, darling.
Oh, look,
Guys,
I don't think anything could change that, Julian. Anyway, even if we were on different sides.
Oh, and by the way, when Ash deleted me as a panelist before, I did hear all your smart comments. I heard all of them. None of you are my BFFs, and you all owe me a drink.
Oh, BFF. Right, got it.
For God's sake.
Okay, I'll just let that go, Jeff, for reasons that are almost too numerous.
Thanks, mate.
So anytime, dude, anytime.
So Euro Aussie, pound Aussie, and euro.
Yeah, look, in a lot of the cases.
As
So
well.
yeah. So Exa cable, right? The reasons why I'm looking at the other two, the Euro Aussie and the Sterling Aussie, is that in both cases you've got divergence. So again, the cases of
I can't show that. Sorry, but I'll believe you.
It's okay. So there's bullish divergence, momentum divergence, which is fine, and it's not, guys, that is not a trigger to trade. It is a setup. And when I look at that, I say, okay, the trend has been going on for a very long period of time. What's the thesis here? The thesis here is that there may be an opportunity for this to reverse. Well, let's not get into there's one or two other technical things which are setting up as well too, which make those quite attractive. And cable, I'm always bullish at cable at the moment because of the way the seasonals work. So I'm those are the three my three picks for next week. Hopefully we'll get some trades off on the broadcast group around that and get cracking on it.
I'm already in that one. I'm not in pound Aussie and I'm not in euro, unfortunately. I feel actually worse since you showed me that chart on the euro, but never mind. Next week's another week.
Well, if it's going to go, Jeff.
How did I miss that?
Interestingly, a couple of other people have said that to me as well too, and it's one of those things whereby I think the clue was in a few days earlier. Otherwise, it was possible to miss it because so little has happened in that cross for such a long time.
Yes, true.
It is the major currency pair in the world, right? And so little has happened to it that people just look at it and go, oh, it's another test to the top. but actually there were some subtle clues in there which were really interesting, and they gave you a second chance. So having had the, if you like, the smash day, everybody got caught out on the 18th, 19th, those two patterns, right? To then come back and give you a ringed low formation was unbelievable and really kind and generous as a currency pair. So
I know.
yeah.
Sorry, you go. I know why. I blindsided myself because I was looking for shorts off the top of the range, looking for a lower high, which didn't come. Look at that.
It's a new
Interesting, though.
trading month, Jeff.
Oh, look, honestly, if I was absolutely serious about what I'm talking about, I would have given trading away a long time ago. It's just a week, isn't it?
Just
Well,
the
actually,
week it is.
if I'm allowed to say something on this, Jeff, as well too, sometimes perceptions of everything, right? And look, I was we were just talking about this with the students as well too, and I said to them, look, our job some days is not to analyze. Our job is to get it right and to be on the right side of the market. And sometimes there's lots and lots of reasons why you need to be there, and sometimes there's only one or two. Often the market's very generous about giving you clues. And I think one of the challenges you often have when you look at these things is you say, well, actually, if you then rolled this back and just cut out the trading range on the left-hand third of that chart, you looked at it and you go, well, hang on a second, there's a couple of high lows in there, and then there's the major, and then there's the high low that created this week, right?
Yeah.
And you go, actually, that just looks, the overall pattern just looks bullish, doesn't it? And you go, well, no, because of what's gone on before and all of the other stuff, right? And I think we can get really hung up about the biases that we have because of what we're seeing at the time. And this is there were, like I said, there was a couple of clues in this Euro chart, and Euro Swiss for me was another major clue, right? You know, that was a unbelievably massive movement in Euro Swiss in a one-day pattern that I almost brushed off and didn't think twice about it, but then had a bit more of a hunt behind the scenes and decided that was actually definitely a trade worth taking. But even then, it then made it slightly painful for you. That had come off on, you know, if you look at the weekly chart in Euro Swiss, it's like been going down forever, right? And then you had some monster reaction over the course of 1 or 2 days. As you can see, they're going down forever. And then you had a monster reaction over the course of 1 or 2 days that was hilarious. You're like, oh my God, that's like 5 times the average range of the last few days. And you're going, okay, so that's quite a big move. Didn't close on the high, closed, you know, two-thirds of the way up, so that gave you a chance. I went long there, but that was 2 weeks ago, and then promptly forgot about it because nothing happened until just recently. Again, I think it was Monday, there was another ring low formation on the daily chart on that pair, which then created a second trade as well again too. And you know, now when you look at it, you can probably just about make it out. It's not very easy with the candlesticks, but you can make it out that trade was there, and that was like, I think on Monday. Yeah, you can just see that ring low formation. It's a bit of a choppy one, but again, the fact that bar down there, that one you're just highlighting there with the arrow, was so much smaller than all the other ones, was another major clue. There was clearly a lot of volume going through that day. Somebody was fighting somebody else, and then it all changed, and boom, the market then went from what's that, 105.73 up to 107.50 in 3 days, 3 or 4 days, right?
Yep.
So again, the clues were there because it had broken up a week earlier, but I was literally sitting on a trade for 2 weeks there for it to happen, which was quite funny, really. Doesn't usually happen that way. I get very impatient. So after the initial explosion that we had back on, you know, the something of May, middle of May.
18th.
Yeah. Oh, the 18th of May again. Funny how that date keeps popping
up, doesn't it? Interesting.
So I didn't look at any of the other crosses. Maybe there was something exciting going on elsewhere as well too. But I just thought there was quite an interesting couple of trades I just highlight to people. And the reason why they're interesting is the clues it gave you, and also the fact the price action was pretty good, and it was very counter to what had been happening. And there was a reason why it was counter in terms of size as to what had been happening to give you the clues that then it was a reversal. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. And Ainsley's gone as well. I think she's gone to bed.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you said sleep well. Okay.
Of all people, I think who ought to go to bed, I think I should probably give it a crack because it is now.
Yeah, you probably should. All right, mate. Thank you very much for popping in.
Not at all. Hey, Ainsley, Jeff, thanks for the chat. Really awesome chat as always with these things. I hope the listeners are enjoying it as well too. You guys are awesome. Love this Sunday show.
Yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? And very enlightening, and sometimes pisses me off because I miss euro dollar trades. But never mind. It's all good.
Jeff. Market's open on Monday.
Strike three.
Sleep well. We'll catch
See
up
you
next
later. See you,
Cheers, guys. I'll see you.
Ainsley, you're done as well?
Yeah. I've got.
All right.
I'm just like I said. I'm just trading water on gold. Tightening up stops on oil at the moment. I stuck my toe back in the oil market, but yeah, where that's it's just such a sensitive little market at the moment, and it's pretty fragile. So yeah, we'll see where that goes next week.
Next week, first week of June. Happy days.
It's winter.
Don't say that.
Well,
Summer
it was
everywhere.
winter, 21 degrees here in last day of autumn. 21 degrees and absolutely gorgeous here in Sydney.
Yeah, we had about 17 or 18, and it was absolutely gorgeous as well.
Heat wave.
It rocketed up to 11 the other day, and I thought, gee whiz, this is brisk and bright. I love it. Yes,
Okay.
we're long euro dollar, Emmanuel. Yes, absolutely. That's our bias anyway. And we'll see how that pans out as of tomorrow, where we'll be hunting down. Well, some of us are already in euro dollar. I'm not, but yes, absolutely. Righto, guys. I'm pretty
Alrighty.
sure Ash is gone. Thanks, Ainsley, for popping in. Obviously, I'll get that. And
Second time.
yes, at least I got it. Have fun. Have a good week.
Have a
we'll
great
catch
week,
up.
everyone. Catch you later.
Catch up next week.
Bye.
Thanks for being here, guys. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.